They said I wasn't qualified for the promotion I built with my own two hands, so I smiled. I nodded. I walked out of that glass boardroom without raising my voice. 3 days later, when I finally turned my phone back on, 90 missed calls lit up the screen, and a billion-dollar company was already collapsing into ash. What they never realized as they laughed behind my back was that I had spent 3 quiet years building the invisible weapon that would end them. And the moment they handed my life to the wrong man, I pressed 10 keys and detonated everything they had ever taken from me. My name is Clara. I am 33 years old, and for most of my adult life I played 2 roles perfectly. The obedient daughter who never complained, the relentless corporate workhorse who never asked for credit. If you have ever bled yourself dry to keep the peace in a family that treated your sacrifice like a debt they were owed, tell me in the comments right now where you are watching from. Smash that like button and subscribe to this channel, because the way the people who tried to bury me ended up digging their own graves is something you are going to want to witness from beginning to end. Which is exactly why we feel this transition is the best move for the company. Vice President Donovan finished his sentence, his voice echoing in the glass-enclosed boardroom of Apex Tech Solutions. The 55-year-old executive carelessly tossed my flawless annual performance review aside, letting the thick stack of papers slide across the polished mahogany table. I sat completely still, my hands folded in my lap, processing. You are incredibly hard-working, Clara. Donovan continued adjusting his expensive tie. But for the senior director position, we need someone with real leadership vision, someone who naturally commands a room. Therefore, the promotion is going to Jamal. I slowly turned my head to look at the man sitting across from me. Jamal, my 32-year-old brother-in-law. He leaned back in his leather ergonomic chair with the unearned arrogance of a man who had spent 2 years living off my labor. He was a master at taking credit for other people's hard work, specifically mine. Over the past 2 years, I had covered his mistakes, fixed his broken reports, and quietly handled his client complaints just to keep the peace at family dinners. Right now, that arrogance was on full display. He smirked at me, his eyes dancing with triumph. Click, click. The sound broke the heavy silence. He was repeatedly clicking a black and silver pen. Not just any pen. It was a $500 Mont Blanc pen. The exact same pen I had purchased for him as a congratulatory gift 2 years ago, when I personally pulled strings to get him hired. At this very company. He had been unemployed for 6 months, and I had risked my own professional reputation to vouch for him. And now he was sitting across from me, stealing the promotion I had worked 70-hour weeks to secure. Do not take it too hard, Clara, Jamal said, his tone dripping with fake sympathy. You are still an essential part of the operations structure. I am really going to need you to stay on my team to handle all those boring spreadsheets. You are so good at the tedious stuff. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. Instead, a cold, crystalline clarity washed over me. The puzzle pieces were snapping together in my mind. This was not just a corporate betrayal. This was a family conspiracy. The echo of a phone call from the previous night suddenly rang loud and clear in my memory. My mother, Martha. Her tone urgent, demanding, utterly devoid of any consideration for my feelings. Clara, you need to step aside on this promotion. Jamal needs this more than you do. Olivia is 29 and pregnant with her first child. They want to buy that new 5-bedroom house in the suburbs, and Jamal needs a higher salary to qualify for the mortgage. You are single. You do not have a family to support. It is your duty to help your sister. Family takes care of family. She had commanded me to sabotage my own career so her golden child daughter could have a perfect suburban life funded by a husband who could not even write a basic data query. I had refused her last night, but my mother had clearly found another way. She had pressured Jamal to go behind my back, to smooth Donovan on the golf course, to steal the role I had basically invented. They expected me to argue. They expected me to beg, maybe offer to train Jamal while he took the credit and the massive salary bump. Donovan looked at me expecting compliance. Jamal kept clicking that expensive, waiting for me to nod and accept my place in the shadows. Instead, I stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate. I reached up and unclipped my employee badge from my blazer. The plastic ID card felt light in my hand. I tossed it onto the mahogany table. It landed right on top of my discarded performance review with a sharp smack. I looked directly into Jamal's eyes, watching his smug smile falter just a fraction. Then I looked at Donovan, whose face suddenly registered a flicker of confusion. "Good luck with the spreadsheets," I said, my voice completely steady, chillingly calm. I did not wait to hear their empty excuses. I turned around, pushed the heavy glass door open, and walked away from that miserable room forever. The heavy glass door clicked shut behind me, sealing their stunned silence inside. My heels struck the polished concrete floor, setting a sharp, rapid rhythm. I did not run. I walked with the absolute precision of someone walking away from a fire. "Wait." Jamal's voice hissed behind me. His leather shoes slapped loudly against the floor. I ignored him. I reached my desk at the center of the bullpen. The entire floor was a sea of gray cubicles and buzzing monitors. I grabbed a small cardboard box, a few framed photos, a favorite coffee mug, my ergonomic mouse. I started dropping them into the box. "Clara, stop this right now," Jamal whispered. His eyes darted around the room nervously. "You are making a huge scene. You are embarrassing the family. Mom is going to flip out. Olivia needs that house. You cannot just throw a tantrum and quit because you did not get your way. Get back in that boardroom before Donovan decides to actually accept your resignation." I did not offer him a single syllable in response. "What is going on out here?" Donovan boomed. The entire office froze. Donovan stormed out of the glass boardroom. His face flushed a dangerous shade of crimson. He marched down the center aisle. "You listen to me very carefully, Clara," Donovan shouted, pointing a thick finger directly at my face. "You do not just walk out of my office. You do not throw your badge on my table. If you walk out that door today, I will personally make sure you never work in corporate logistics again. I know every major player in this industry. I will make one phone call and your career is permanently over. You'll be blacklisted from here to the coast." A heavy, suffocating silence blanketed the room. My coworkers stared at me with wide eyes, waiting for me to apologize, waiting for me to crumble under the weight of a powerful executive destroying my professional future. I did not flinch. I did not break eye contact. Instead, I reached for the one item on my desk that truly mattered, my personal laptop. I opened the sleek silver device and flipped the screen up. "What are you doing?" Jamal demanded, his voice trembling. He tried to look at my screen, but I angled it away from him. What none of them knew, what Donovan had never bothered to ask, what Jamal had never been curious enough to understand, was that Apex Tech Solutions handled billions of dollars in freight and shipping logistics on top of a proprietary back-end routing system, an advanced algorithm that automated the most complex supply chain issues, cutting delivery times in half, saving the company millions. Donovan thought the corporate technology department built it. Jamal told everyone he managed it. I built it. I coded it from scratch on my own personal equipment on my own time. I owned the source code. I owned the intellectual property outright through a private business entity. I had merely granted Apex Tech a free revocable license to use it, because it made my job easier and kept clients happy. My fingers danced across the keyboard. 10 keystrokes, that was all it took. I navigated to the administrative dashboard. I clicked the master control panel. I initiated the revocation protocol. I deactivated the access keys connecting my private server to the Apex Tech corporate network. I watched the progress bar hit 100%. A small green checkmark appeared on my screen, confirming the total disconnection. I closed the laptop with a satisfying snap and placed it carefully into my cardboard box. "You are making the biggest mistake of your entire life," Donovan sneered, crossing his arms, completely unaware of the digital bomb I had just detonated. He thought I was throwing away a steady paycheck. He had no idea I was walking with the keys to his entire operational kingdom. I picked up the box. It weighed almost nothing. I turned to face Jamal, who was standing frozen in my workspace. His arrogant posture had vanished. I looked him dead in the eye and gave him a slow, chilling smile. A predatory look that finally made him step back. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, he suddenly realized he had no idea how to actually do the job he just stole. I walked past Donovan without a single word. My heels clicked against the concrete floor, echoing loudly in the completely silent room. I walked straight to the elevator bank and pressed the down button. The button illuminated with a soft white glow. The entire office watched me. No one moved. No one spoke. The soft chime of the elevator arriving sounded incredibly loud in the heavy quiet. I stepped in. The polished metal doors glided shut on Donovan's red face and Jamal's panicked stare. The descent took exactly 40 seconds. I did not shed a tear. I did not feel panic. Instead, icy relief washed over me. That crushing weight was finally gone. I walked out into the bright afternoon sunlight, climbed into my car, pulled out my smartphone, and the screen was already lighting up. I held the power button down, watched the screen go black, tossed the device into the glove compartment. I drove home in silence. My apartment welcomed me with a quiet serenity I had deeply missed. I kicked off my heels, dropped my blazer on the armchair, and walked into the kitchen. I uncorked a bottle of red wine I had been saving. Today was a special occasion. I poured a glass, grabbed my laptop, sat down at my kitchen island. The setting sun cast long shadows across the room as I opened my encrypted file system. It was time to review the legal armor I had spent years building. I opened a folder labeled Nexus Freight Dynamics, my private registered corporate entity. I established it 3 years ago when I realized the sheer magnitude of the supply chain inefficiencies at Apex Tech. Back then, I approached Donovan with a proposal to build an automated routing system. He laughed in my face, told me creating proprietary software was above my pay grade and unnecessary. So I built it anyway. Weekends, late nights, my own hardware, my own time. Within 2 months of quietly integrating my software into my daily workflow, my department's productivity skyrocketed. Soon, the entire company was relying on the flawless data outputs my systems generated. Jamal took credit for the seamless operational flow, claiming his leadership drove the profits. But they never owned the machine. They only enjoyed the results. The fine print of the license stated that the creator retained the absolute to terminate access at any moment, without prior warning for any reason whatsoever. By pressing those 10 keystrokes in the bullpen, I had simply exercised my legal right as the sole proprietor of the software. I took a slow sip of my wine. Apex Tech handled hundreds of thousands of active shipping routes every single day. Without my algorithm constantly calculating and correcting the logistics grid, their corporate network was effectively a blind giant running toward a cliff. I closed the laptop, finished my wine, and decided I was going to enjoy a long weekend. For the next 72 hours, I lived in absolute peace. I did not look at a computer screen. I did not check my email. I went for long runs. I read a novel from cover to cover. I slept 8 hours a night without the crushing anxiety of managing Jamal's incoming disasters or dealing with my mother's manipulative guilt trips. The world outside my apartment continued to spin, but my personal universe was calm. Monday morning arrived with bright sunshine pouring through my bedroom blinds. I stretched, made a cup of coffee, decided the blackout period was officially over, time to see the damage. I retrieved my phone from the glove compartment, plugged it in, pressed the power button. The moment the screen illuminated, the phone seized up. It began vibrating violently against the granite countertop, emitting a relentless barrage of notification chimes. The screen exploded with a chaotic flood of red alerts. I picked up the device and looked at the lock screen. 90 missed calls, 154 text messages, 20 calls from Donovan alone, 30 calls from Jamal. The rest were from frantic executives, board members, and my hysterical parents. I scrolled slowly. Clara, the entire freight network is down. Call me immediately. This is Donovan. What did you do to the system? We are losing millions. Pick up the phone. Clara, please. The clients are pulling their contracts. You have to fix this. How could you do this to your family? Jamal is crying in his office. Apex Tech's nationwide network had collapsed. Trucks were stranded at distribution centers without routing orders. Major corporate clients were flying blind. The company was bleeding money by the minute. My brother-in-law, the newly minted senior director of operations, had been exposed as a fraud who could not even turn the lights back on. I took a sip of my coffee, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The snowball had officially started rolling down the mountain, and it was about to crush every person who had taken me for granted. And then, before I could even set my coffee mug down, a violent pounding echoed through my apartment. The knocking was not polite, not hesitant. It was a frantic, aggressive hammering against the wood, loud enough to rattle the picture frames in my hallway. I glanced at the digital clock on my microwave. Barely 8 in the morning. I walked to the front door, turned the deadbolt, pulled the door open. My entire toxic family stood in the hallway. looking like a mob preparing to storm a castle. Olivia near the back, heavily pregnant, clutching her designer handbag with white knuckles. Martha and Richard flanking the doorway, their faces drawn tight with anger and exhaustion. But the person leading the charge was Jamal. He shoved past me without asking, barged into my sanctuary. My parents and Olivia filed in right behind him, forming a wall of hostility in my entryway. Jamal was unrecognizable, his expensive suit jacket wrinkled, stained with spilled coffee, his tie hanging loose, his eyes bloodshot, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. He was not acting like a senior director of operations. He was acting like a man watching his entire life burn to the ground. "Fix it," Jamal screamed. "You need to fix it right now, Clara. Turn the system back on. Give me the administrative passwords." I closed the front door calmly, leaned back against the solid wood, crossed my arms. "Fix what, Jamal?" I asked, my voice completely level. "I no longer work at Apex Tech Solutions. Your operational problems are exactly that." "Your problems. Do not play games with me," Jamal yelled. "The entire freight network is completely dead. Thousands of trucks sitting idle. Drivers cannot get their routing assignments. The automated dispatch software is demanding an encryption key nobody in the technology department possesses. You changed the master passwords and locked us out. The Vanguard logistics accounts are failing. If we do not restore the system by noon, Vanguard pulls their contract. If Vanguard pulls their contract, Apex Tech goes bankrupt. Hand over the administrative passwords right now." He lunged forward, stopped just inches from me, tried to use his physical presence to intimidate me, but I did not shrink away. "I do not owe you anything, Jamal," I said softly. "You wanted the leadership role. Well, congratulations. Real leaders figure out how to solve catastrophic network failures. I suggest you head back to the office and start typing. You are sabotaging my career out of jealousy," he spat. "You are bitter because Donovan finally recognized my talent." Martha stepped forward, her voice dropping into that familiar, sickeningly sweet tone. "Clara, please stop being so difficult. You know your brother-in-law did not mean any of those harsh things. He is just under stress. You are family. You have to fix this system for him." I pulled my arm out of her grasp. Richard puffed out his chest. "Listen to your mother. You are acting completely out of line. We did not raise you to be this vindictive. Give him the passwords. Apologize. And we can all move past this." "A tiny bruise," I repeated, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I built the entire logistical framework currently keeping his company afloat. And you call my refusal to be a doormat vindictive? How can you be so selfish?" Martha screamed, the veins in her neck straining. "Jamal is the provider of this family. Olivia is pregnant. It is just like when you refused to co-sign her car loan. You have always been obsessed with watching your sister fail." I felt a cold, hard smile pull at the corners of my mouth. "You mean the car loan you wanted me to pay, using my community college tuition money? The tuition I paid for by working back-to-back night shifts at a diner. While you and Dad bought Olivia a Mercedes in cash for her high school graduation, that car loan." Right on cue, Olivia let out a sharp, dramatic gasp, stumbled backward, clutched her rounded stomach with both hands, tears instantly flooding her carefully applied makeup. "Oh my God," Olivia wailed. "The stress is too much for the baby. Jamal, it hurts." My stomach hurt so badly. "Clara is doing this on purpose." Jamal rushed to her side. "Look at what you are doing to your pregnant sister. You are a monster, Clara. A cold, bitter monster." For 33 years, the script had worked flawlessly. Every single time she cried, I caved. I wrote the check, did the homework, fixed the spreadsheet, stepped aside, apologized for existing, but not today. Today, the script was being rewritten, and I was the one holding the pen. I turned my back on her performance and walked directly into my kitchen, picked up my coffee mug, the ceramic still pleasantly warm against my palms, took a long, slow sip. "Are you quite finished?" I asked. My voice cut through their noise with the precision of a scalpel. My father opened his mouth. I held up a single authoritative finger. The gesture was so sharp, it silenced him. "Since we are all gathered here today to discuss Jamal's thriving career, let us talk about his actual qualifications," I said. "Over the past 2 years, Jamal has not produced a single original piece of data analysis. If you ask him to build a pivot table right now, he will break out in a cold sweat. He does not know how to code. He does not understand the back-end routing architecture. He spent his days scheduling catered lunches and playing golf with Donovan while I managed the entire freight network from my cubicle. Jamal got the promotion because he is excellent at taking credit for my late nights. You are lying, Martha gasped, clutching her pearls. Jamal is a brilliant executive. Donovan said so himself at the holiday party. I set my coffee mug down with a heavy thud. I am not lying. The system that runs Apex Tech does not belong to Apex Tech. It belongs to me. The living room went dead silent. The sound of city traffic humming outside my apartment window suddenly seemed incredibly loud. What are you talking about? Richard asked, his voice losing its aggressive edge. I built the automated routing system on my own time. 3 years ago, I legally registered a limited liability company. I filed the copyrights and patents under my private business entity. The software Jamal claims to manage belongs entirely to my independent LLC. The word LLC dropped into the room like a heavy stone. My parents stared at me completely stunned. The concept that their quiet, obedient pushover daughter had established a legal corporate entity and secured intellectual property rights behind their backs was entirely incomprehensible to them. I granted Apex Tech a free revocable license, I explained. When Donovan gave my job to a man who cannot even run a basic data query, I simply revoked it. I logged out, I took my private property. And I went home. Jamal stared at me, searching for an argument that did not exist. Humiliation flooded his face, rapidly morphing into vicious rage. You think you are so smart, he spat. Donovan has already contacted the police. They are tracking your digital footprint. You are going to prison for corporate sabotage. Give me the access keys right now, or I might not convince Donovan to press criminal charges. Richard stepped forward, his face a mask of grim determination. Clara, go into your bedroom, bring out your laptop, and hand it over to Jamal, right now, for the good of the family name. I am not handing over my laptop. You will do as you are told, Richard roared, reaching his hand out, fully expecting me to flinch and obey the patriarchal command he had used to control me for 33 years. I did not flinch. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. I kept my eyes locked on my father as I unlocked the screen. I tapped the phone app. I deliberately pressed the number 9, then the number 1, then the number 1 again. I held the illuminated screen up so my father, my mother, Olivia, and Jamal could clearly see the 3 digits typed on the display. I hovered my thumb directly over the green call button. You have exactly 30 seconds to get out of my home before I report a break-in, I said, my voice cutting through the tension like breaking glass. I will tell the dispatcher that 4 hostile individuals have forced their way into my apartment, that they are threatening me, and that I fear for my physical safety, Martha gasped. Clara, you would not dare call the police on your own parents. Try me 20 seconds. The shift was instantaneous. The arrogant entitlement vanished, replaced by sheer panic. Let us go. Richard snapped, grabbing Martha by the elbow and shoving her toward the door. She is completely unhinged. Olivia let out another dramatic wail. You are a terrible sister. I hope you rot in that apartment. Jamal glared at me with pure venom as he backed out the doorway. This is not over, Clara. You are going to lose everything. 10 seconds. They stumbled out. Richard slammed my front door shut so hard the walls vibrated. I engaged the deadbolt, fastened the security chain. I smiled, because they thought they had just won round 2. They had no idea I had not even started fighting yet. The very next morning, I stepped out of a cab in front of the Capitol Grill, the kind of restaurant where multi-million-dollar acquisitions were negotiated over dry-aged ribeyes. I walked through the heavy mahogany doors and let the hostess guide me to a secluded leather booth tucked away in the back corner. Waiting for me was Attorney Harrison, a 60-year-old legal shark who specialized entirely in intellectual property and corporate litigation. We had been quietly working together for 3 years. I slid into the booth and pulled a thick crumpled envelope from my designer tote bag. Good morning, Clara, Harrison said. You look remarkably rested for a woman whose former employer is currently making national headlines. I slid the paper toward him. A courier delivered this to my apartment building at 6 in the morning. Harrison picked up the envelope, adjusted his reading glasses. It was a formal cease and desist order from Apex Tech Solutions. Aggressive corporate jargon. Threats of a massive civil lawsuit, accusations of corporate espionage. Harrison threw his head back and laughed, tossed the document back onto the table like it was trash. This is pathetic. Donovan is terrified. His legal team is grasping at straws. They have zero legal ground to stand on, and they know it. Are you certain the intellectual property filings are watertight? I asked. Clara, your paperwork is ironclad. We filed comprehensive patents, federal copyrights on every line of source code, timestamps proving you built it on your personal servers outside of work hours. You never signed a non-compete. You never signed an IP transfer. You own the software outright. When revoked of the license, you were simply closing the door to your own private property. The waiter dropped off 2 cups of black coffee. Harrison leaned in closer. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. The real issue here is not what you did to them, Clara. The real issue is what they are currently trying to do to you. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. Set it squarely between us. I have been monitoring the server logs since you initiated the lockout. Apex Tech is bleeding millions in their desperation to turn the lights back on. Donovan and your brother-in-law have authorized their IT department to force their way into your software. I stared at him, my heart skipping a beat. Are they trying to hack the system? They are actively trying to bypass your encryption. Harrison confirmed, tapping a printed spreadsheet showing thousands of failed login attempts, brute force attacks. I felt a cold smile stretch across my face. They were walking straight into a massive legal trap. By actively attempting to breach your private servers, Apex Tech is committing a felony under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, federal copyright infringement. You did not break the law. They did. Harrison paused, and then the victorious energy evaporated into something heavy, something suffocatingly serious. He reached into his briefcase again, withdrew a thick black folder sealed with a tamper-evident security tag, placed it onto the tablecloth with care, treating it like a loaded weapon. We have a much larger problem. I stared at the black folder. My mouth went dry. A chill crawled up my spine, unrelated to the restaurant air conditioning. What did you find? Harrison broke the seal. Slid a stack of dense highlighted financial routing logs across the table. I looked down at the numbers. At first glance, it looked like standard freight billing data. But, as my eyes adjusted, I realized I was looking at something entirely different. Shadow transactions, buried deep within the automated billing cycle for Vanguard Logistics. Our largest and most lucrative client. Your brother-in-law was not just taking credit for your late nights, Harrison explained, pointing his expensive pen at a specific cluster of highlighted numbers. Jamal has been quietly embedding ghost invoices into the Vanguard supply chain, shaving microscopic fractions of pennies off individual transit costs, redirecting those hidden margins. I felt the blood drain from my face. He has been siphoning the money into a holding account, hidden within the Apex Tech corporate structure, Harrison continued. Over the last 6 months, he has accumulated exactly $1.2 million, sitting in a digital vault, waiting to be transferred. My hands started to shake. Where is the money going? That is the terrifying part, Harrison said. I tracked the destination code, a one-way routing sequence programmed to dump the entire $1.2 million into an untraceable offshore account in the Cayman Islands. But he could not execute the final transfer. Why not? Because he lacked the executive security clearance, Harrison replied. And that brings us to the real reason you were denied your promotion on Monday morning. The realization hit me with the force of a speeding freight train, the glass boardroom, Donovan tossing my performance review aside, Jamal smirking as he clicked his Mont Blanc pen, my mother calling me the night before, aggressively demanding I step aside for the good of the family. The puzzle pieces shifted, forming a new, incredibly sinister picture. Jamal did not need the senior director position for the prestige. He needed it because the title came with a level 5 executive security clearance. He needed that specific administrative access to bypass the final financial firewall and wire the embezzled $1.2 million to his offshore account. But that was not even the dark part of his plan. Harrison leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. He knew the missing funds would eventually be flagged during the annual corporate audit. He needed a scapegoat, he needed a catastrophic failure to hide his tracks, and he needed a target to take the blame. I stared at the paperwork in absolute horror. He was going to frame me. Harrison nodded slowly. Once he secured the promotion and transferred the money, he planned to initiate a system crash within your proprietary routing software. He was going to use his new administrative clearance to inject malicious code into the Vanguard billing grid. He was going to manufacture a massive financial glitch and point the finger directly at the original developer, you. My breath caught in my throat. My family had conspired to hand my career to a man actively planning to send me to prison. My mother had unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, pushed me toward the edge of a cliff to protect a criminal. Jamal had sat in my living room yesterday, holding my pregnant sister, acting like I'm a victim, while actively working to destroy my entire existence. You were supposed to be the sacrificial lamb, Harrison stated, very softly. When the auditors found the missing money, Jamal would have testified your software failed. You would have faced federal charges completely alone. The sheer magnitude of his evil plan finally crystallized in my mind. My unexpected departure had accidentally trapped him. By logging out, I froze his money and blocked his escape route. Jamal was not panicking over logistics. He was terrified of facing decades in a federal prison cell. Without me, a sharp vibration broke the heavy silence. My smartphone buzzed against the white tablecloth, a high-priority email alert sender. Vice President Donovan, subject line in capital letters, urgent, mandatory, board appearance. I unlocked the screen. Clara. Due to the catastrophic nature of your unauthorized departure, I am officially mandating your appearance at an emergency executive board meeting tomorrow morning at exactly 8. The CEO of Vanguard Logistics, Mr. Maxwell, is flying out on his private jet to personally address this outage. You will arrive with your laptop. You will restore full operational access. You will sign a legally binding transfer of intellectual property rights. If you fail to appear, we will immediately contact federal authorities. We have the legal resources to ensure you spend the foreseeable future behind bars. I slid the phone across the table to Harrison. A wide, predatory grin spread across his face. Donovan is completely oblivious to the embezzlement. He thinks this is just a disgruntled former employee holding a software license hostage. He has no idea that his newly appointed senior director is secretly trying to rob his biggest client blind. And to make matters even better, Donovan just put an extortion attempt in writing. They have set a trap, Harrison agreed, but they built it on a foundation of absolute ignorance. They do not realize you have the server logs. They do not realize we know about the offshore account. Tomorrow morning is going to be a bloodbath, I said softly. It will be an execution, Harrison corrected. When we walk into that boardroom tomorrow, there is no turning back. You will be destroying your brother-in-law in front of his employers and his most lucrative client. The fallout will hit your family like a tidal wave. Are you completely ready for that specific level of permanent collateral damage? I picked up my purse and smiled. I crossed that line 3 days ago. I left the steakhouse with the thick black folder secured safely in my tote bag. As I unlocked my front door, my smartphone vibrated. Incoming call. Richard. I swiped the green icon. Did not say hello. Clara, sweetheart. Richard began, his voice dripping with a soft manufactured warmth I had not heard since I was a little girl. The exact tone he used to convince a difficult client to sign a bad contract. If you just go into the office tomorrow morning, apologize for your emotional outburst, and give Jamal the administrative passwords, this will all blow over. Jamal is even willing to let you be his assistant again. You are asking me to hand over my private company so Jamal can pay for a suburban mortgage. I am asking you to be a decent sister, Richard snapped. I am not destroying my life, I replied, my voice devoid of any emotion. I am destroying his. I ended the call, navigated to his contact profile, selected block caller. I did the exact same thing for Martha, Olivia, and Jamal. The lines of communication with my toxic family were officially and permanently severed. I turned to the dining table, retrieved a massive heavy-duty binder I had purchased on my way home, hooked up my high-speed laser printer, opened my encrypted laptop. The outside are dark as I began assembling the guillotine. I printed 500 pages of pristine, irrefutable evidence. Federal copyright registrations, software licensing agreements, termination clauses, and then the darker material. Shadow transaction logs, digital signatures tying specific terminal commands directly to Jamal's corporate credentials. The offshore destination routing codes, the digital vault waiting to receive the embezzled $1.2 million. I organized every single page with color-coded tabs, creating a devastatingly clear narrative of fraud, gross managerial negligence, and intellectual property theft. By the time I snapped the massive metal rings shut, it was past midnight. The binder weighed nearly 10 heavy pounds, a physical manifestation of my vindication. There was only one task left before the sun came up. I opened a secure browser window, bypassed the standard corporate directories. Using a backdoor contact registry I had maintained for server emergencies, I pulled up a highly confidential phone number, the direct personal cell phone line for Maxwell, the chief executive officer of Vanguard Logistics. I dialed. The phone rang twice. "This is Maxwell speaking, Mr. Maxwell," I said, keeping my voice incredibly steady. "My name is Clara. I am the sole owner and developer of the Nexus Freight Dynamics routing architecture, the software that currently manages your entire supply chain." There was a sharp silence on the other end. "I am scheduled to attend the emergency board meeting with Donovan at 8 tomorrow morning," I continued. "I am calling tonight to personally inform you that the network outage was not a glitch. It was a manual shutdown on my end to prevent a massive internal financial theft targeting your accounts. I have the evidence. I will see you in the boardroom tomorrow." The morning air was crisp as I stepped out of my car and walked toward the towering glass facade of Apex Tech Solutions. I carried the 10-pound black binder in my left hand. It felt exactly like a solid, heavy block of absolute justice. I swiped my temporary visitor pass. The guard who had greeted me every single morning for 3 years looked at me with wide eyes. He had clearly heard the rumors. I stepped into the elevator. My reflection stared back from the polished metal doors. A sharp, tailored charcoal suit, black stilettos. I did not look like a defeated employee coming to beg. I looked like a corporate executioner. The elevator doors glided open with a soft chime. I walked down the long carpeted hallway. I could see them all gathered inside before I even reached the door. I slowly pushed the heavy glass door open and stepped inside the lion's den. The atmosphere hit me instantly, thick with hostility, suffocating arrogance. Donovan sat near the head of the table, his face flushed, projecting the aggressive aura of a man who believed he held all the winning cards. Flanking him were 3 men in identical dark suits, the Apex Tech corporate legal team, legal pads open, pens poised, ready to draft the terms of my unconditional surrender. And then there was Jamal, directly across from Donovan, practically vibrating with smug satisfaction. Brand new, perfectly tailored navy blue suit. He must have purchased it over the weekend, prematurely spending the massive salary increase he thought he had secured by stealing my promotion. He leaned back in his plush leather chair with his ankles casually crossed. Ceramic coffee cup in one hand, Mont Blanc pen in the other. Click, click. The exact same pen he had clicked in my face when he stole my job. When I walked through the door, his eyes locked onto mine. He gave me a slow, victorious smirk. He truly believed I had caved to my father's manipulation and Donovan's legal threats. He assumed I was carrying my personal laptop, ready to plug it in, restore the routing network, and sign away my intellectual property. He thought he was about to become the hero who saved the Vanguard account, while I would be demoted back to his silent, obedient assistant. He did not know his entire life was printed on the 500 pages in my hand. Donovan cleared his throat, gestured toward a single empty chair positioned at the very opposite end of the long table, the seat traditionally reserved for subordinates facing severe disciplinary action. "Sit down, Clara," Donovan ordered, flat and uncompromising. I did not move toward the empty seat. I did not break eye contact. I walked deliberately toward the head of the table. My stilettos clicked loudly, a steady, unyielding rhythm. I stopped right next to the empty space where the CEO of Vanguard Logistics was meant to sit. I placed my heavy black binder onto the polished mahogany wood. The loud, heavy thud echoed through the silent room. One of the lawyers jumped in his seat. "I am not going to sit down," I stated, my voice echoing with absolute authority. "And I am not here to negotiate a surrender." Donovan slammed his open palms flat against the mahogany wood, pushed himself up to tower over me. "You listen to me," Donovan bellowed. "You do not get to dictate the terms of this meeting. You are nothing but a disgruntled, highly unprofessional former employee. You deliberately sabotaged our proprietary systems. You are a thief." I kept my expression neutral. Jamal sat back with a smug grin. The 3 lawyers waited for me to crack. Donovan reached into his leather portfolio and pulled out a thick stack of legal documents, slapped it onto the table, pushed it forcefully across the polished wood, then reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a silver pen, tossed it onto the papers. It clattered sharply against the silence. "This is an intellectual property transfer agreement. Sign it, fix the network, and we will not have you arrested. If you refuse, I have the police waiting. You will be handcuffed." Perp walked through the lobby. Jamal leaned forward. "Just sign the papers, Clara. Donovan is being incredibly generous. Do not make this worse. Think about the family. Think about how devastated your parents will be when they see your mugshot on the evening news." I looked down at the silver pen. I did not touch it. I did not extend my hand. Instead, I grabbed the massive black binder I had brought. I hoisted it up and dropped it squarely onto the center of the mahogany table, directly on top of Donovan's ridiculous legal contract. The heavy thud of the binder striking the table was incredibly loud. It sounded like a judge's gavel coming down. The sheer weight of my evidence crushed the non-disclosure agreement beneath it. The silver pen bounced off the table and clattered onto the floor. I placed my hands flat on top of the black binder and leaned forward, mirroring Donovan's aggressive posture. "You seem to be operating under a massive delusion, Donovan," I said, my voice soft but carrying clearly. "You seem to think you hold the power in this room. I am not going to sign your intellectual property transfer. I am not going to restore your network access. I am not going to help Jamal fix a crisis he is too incompetent to understand. And I am absolutely not going to sit here and let you call me a thief when the real criminal is sitting right across from you wearing a suit paid for with stolen money." Jamal's smug smile vanished. The color drained from his face. I opened the black binder, pulled out crisp color-coded documents, walked deliberately around the massive mahogany table, handed a thick packet to Donovan, slid identical copies directly in front of each corporate lawyer. They stopped glaring at me and started reading. The room was perfectly silent except for the sound of turning pages. Page 1. Federal copyright registration. Page 2. Patent registration under Nexus Freight Dynamics. Sole proprietor, chief executive officer. Me. Donovan's face began to blanch. He turned to his lead counsel. "Tell me she is bluffing," Donovan ordered, his voice cracking. "Tell me this is fake paperwork, and we can have her arrested right now." The lead attorney did not answer. He flipped back to the first page, scanning the federal seals, pulled a smartphone from his pocket, opened a legal database app, typed in the patent registration numbers. The entire boardroom waited. The silence stretched out, heavy, suffocating. Finally, the lead attorney looked up directly at Donovan. The color had completely drained from the lawyer's face. He leaned in close and whispered. But the room was so quiet that his words carried across the mahogany table. "The documents are flawless. The patents are real. The copyrights are registered federally. She owns the entire source code outright. We have absolutely no legal claim to the software. None." Donovan looked like he had been struck by lightning. His jaw dropped. But that is not the worst part. The lead attorney continued. "Look at page 12. By authorizing your information technology department to run brute force attacks against my private servers over the past 72 hours, I explained. You are actively engaging in unauthorized cyber intrusions. That is a direct violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. You are committing federal crimes. Right now." All three lawyers immediately pulled out their phones, furiously texting the IT department to halt all operations. Donovan slumped back in his chair, physically ill. "Clara," he stammered, "we can fix this. Name your price. We will fire Jamalta today. Just turn the network back on before Vanguard arrives. Please." I looked at Donovan, then at Jamal, visibly shaking. "I am not here for my job back," I stated. "I am here to formally serve Apex Tech Solutions with a $5 million lawsuit for intellectual property infringement, unauthorized system access, and corporate harassment." The executives gasped. One panicked board member dropped his expensive coffee cup, spilling dark liquid across the polished wood. But Jamal could not handle the silence. He pushed his heavy leather chair back so forcefully that it tipped over and crashed loudly against the glass wall behind him, stood up, slammed his fist down onto the mahogany table. "You are a liar," Jamal screamed. "Do not listen to a single word she is saying, Donovan. She crashed the routing software to hide her tracks. Over the past 6 months, she has been siphoning money from the Vanguard logistics account. That is why I took the promotion. I was building a case against her. She stole over $1 million from our biggest client. Do not let her walk out of this building." The boardroom erupted into chaotic murmurs. Donovan lifted his head. a desperate spark of hope igniting in his eyes. "You have been stealing from Vanguard," Donovan asked, wavering between anger and relief. I did not defend myself. I did not shout back. I just maintained my cold, steady gaze on Jamal. He was breathing heavily, a triumphant sneeze slowly returning to his face. He actually believed his lies were going to save him. I checked the digital clock on the boardroom wall. Exactly 8:15 in the morning. Perfect timing. Before Donovan could order the lawyers to contact the authorities, the heavy glass doors of the boardroom swung open with a sharp, commanding swoosh. Every head turned toward the entrance. CEO Maxwell of Vanguard Logistics stepped over the threshold, a tall, imposing man in his late 50s, sharp charcoal suit, absolute authority. He did not look panicked about his paralyzed supply chain. He looked like a man arriving to witness an execution. Flanking him on his right was my attorney, Harrison, clutching his own leather briefcase, wearing a deeply satisfied smile. Donovan scrambled to his feet, nearly tripping over his own shoes. "Mr. Maxwell," Donovan stammered, smoothing his tie, forcing a wide, obsequious smile. "Please come in. We were just getting to the bottom of this unfortunate network glitch. I assure you, we have identified the rogue employee responsible." Donovan practically lunged forward, extending his right hand. CEO Maxwell did not extend his hand, did not even break his stride, walked straight past Donovan, left the vice president standing awkwardly in the middle of the room. Maxwell did not look at the board members. He did not look at the legal team's ice-curious gaze bypassed everyone and locked directly onto Jamal. Jamal stopped smiling immediately. The false confidence melted off his face. He took a step backward, hit the glass wall. Harrison broke the tension, walked briskly to the central multimedia console, pulled a slim black tablet from his briefcase, connected a high-speed cable directly into the primary projector hub. The massive screen at the front of the mahogany table flared to life. "Gentlemen," Harrison began, commanding absolute attention, "my client Clara did not hack your systems. In reality, she is the only reason you are not all currently facing federal indictment." Harrison tapped the screen. A highly detailed spreadsheet appeared, the massive billing grid for Vanguard Logistics. "Mr. Maxwell brought us in to conduct a quiet, independent forensic audit of his company's shipping invoice," Harrison explained. "During that audit, we discovered a highly sophisticated, deeply buried algorithm, siphoning microscopic fractions of pennies from every single Vanguard freight transaction over the past 6 months." Donovan turned completely pale. Harrison swiped to the next slide, a digital holding vault holding exactly $1.2 million. Next to the vault, a scheduled wire transfer protocol. Destination: an untraceable offshore banking account in the Cayman Islands. "The thief accumulated over $1 million, Harrison continued, but they ran into a significant logistical problem. They could not authorize the final offshore transfer without a Level 5 executive security clearance. They needed a massive promotion to finalize the theft." Harrison swiped to the final slide. A digital access log, time-stamped from late Friday night, a successful login attempt to the financial routing of mainframe. And right next to the timestamp, a glaring, undeniable digital signature. The digital signature belongs to the newly promoted Senior Director of Operations, Jamal. The entire boardroom erupted into chaotic gasps. Donovan stumbled backward, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The Apex Tech legal team immediately shoved their chairs away from the table, physically distancing themselves from the exposed criminal. Jamal opened his mouth to deny it, but no words came out. The elevators in the main lobby chimed loudly. The doors slid open in perfect unison. 6 individuals stepped out onto the executive floor. Sharp windbreakers, thick utility belts, coordinated tactical precision. The man leading the group held up a badge, pressed the gold shield flat against the transparent wall for everyone inside to see. "White-collar crime detectives." Jamal's knees buckled. He collapsed onto the carpeted floor, his expensive new tailored suit bunching awkwardly around his shaking shoulders. The man who had strutted into this room, acting like a king, instantly reduced to a weeping, pathetic mess. He looked up from the floor, tears streaming, bloodshot eyes wide. He crawled forward on his hands and knees, scrambling toward me. "Please, Clara," Jamal begged, his voice cracking into a high-pitched, hysterical whine. "Please. You have to tell them to stop. You have to help me. I am family. Please, Clara, think of Olivia. She is pregnant. She is having a baby. You cannot let them take me away. I looked down at him. Ice in my veins. You do not need leadership vision where you are going, Jamal. The heavy glass doors swung wide open. The lead detective stepped over the threshold with absolute authority, gold shield catching the fluorescent light. 2 uniformed officers followed, expressions completely devoid of sympathy. They bypassed the stunned legal team, walked straight past a trembling Donovan, stopped directly behind Jamal. Get up, the lead detective ordered. Jamal was still on his knees, face buried in his hands, weeping.